Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today we are here for another weekly wrap-up. These are going to be all the books that I read from June 23rd to the 29th. I think this week went a little better than last week, although I have 7 books to talk about. One of the arcs was super long and it was taking me a little bit of time to get through, so not too bad of a week though. I did want to kind of try and finish June strong, but I missed quite a few books off of my TBR, but that's okay. You know, I took some time off, you know, birthday time, so I haven't been nonstop reading. So anyways, we have 7 books to talk about, and let's go ahead and dive into my weekly wrap up. Okay guys, so as always, before I dive into my weekly reads, I do want to remind you, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm slowly trying to get to that 1K subscribers, and so all your support really means a lot. So I do want to mention, I'm sorry, you may hear my AC on, but it is freaking hot in San Diego this weekend. I'm dying. I'm in front of the ring light, so if you hear it in the background, I do apologize, but I have to have it on. So anyways, let's go ahead and start with my weekly reads. So I started off the week with Saving Verakko. This is the 3rd book in the Clickanian series by Victoria Aveline. And these are actually now available on Audible Plus, at least currently. So I am definitely diving in to finish this series. I really love the narrator. I think he does such a really amazing job. And for some reason, his name just went out of my head. So I am really sorry about that. But anyways, I listened to this on audiobook. This is Verakko and Lily's romance. In a previous book, some of the human women that have been captured and are on this alien planet kind of for breeding purposes. They're trying to, you know, the species hasn't had like fated mates for a really long time, and they are trying to kind of steal humans to see if they could have fated mates or have better breeders. Their kind of whole different dynamic of like the women get to pick the men, and like their marriages only last like a few months because it's all about basically kind of trying to see if you can, you know, conceive or breed with somebody. So it's a totally different dynamic. You already see this in the last couple books, and some humans were in this facility where they were kind of keeping them prisoner, and they do get freed in the last book. Lily was one of these women that were freed, but she does not trust these aliens, these other aliens. She feels like bad guys are going to come after them again. And so she decides, like, I'm just booking it. I'm going in the forest. She's a survivalist. Her parents were pretty crazy survivalists, and so she knows how to survive on her own. So she's got a lot of those interesting you know, strengths where she is a good survivalist. So her and this other girl don't trust them, and they basically bounce and go into the forest to try and survive on their own. They end up getting split up, and so she, like, there's an accident that kind of happens and they get split up. And so Lily is determined to find this other girl because she doesn't have the same, you know, strengths that she has, and she's really worried about her. So she's slowly trekking through this wilderness to try and find her. Then we have Verakko, who is part of kind of like this rescue mission, and he ends up getting taken by, I can't remember what the species was called, but they can fly, and he's being flown, and he's already like kind of has issues with heights. And so he's kind of fighting him. He has this ability where he can sway, I think it's what it's called, where he can kind of manipulate your mind and make you do things. So he manages to basically get away from this guy, fall from this guy. He also has kind of like a venomous bite, which I thought was really interesting and different than the other ones. And he kind of falls right into her lap kind of thing. So they end up kind of staying together and trying to help each other. He's kind of trying to help her find Lily, but he's also kind of trying to get her back to the city, mainly his. And he immediately feels like they could be mates, but he's not getting any of like the signs. Usually there's like markings on the arm or something like that. and he's not getting that. So he's like kind of not sure if they are fated mates, but he's very drawn to her and very attracted to her, and she's really attracted to him too. But basically kind of he's hiding a little something about the fact that he actually, his mom is like one of these queens or rulers in one of these, you know, cities. And he does have kind of an arranged marriage about to happen because he has been chosen. It's kind of politically aligned, but also because for breeding. And so he's kind of hasn't told her that. So I really liked this one. I think it was a lot slower moving for me, and I did like the survival aspects of it. Lily just kind of drove me nuts because, of course, we see the conflict coming of like the reveals of like him keeping these things from her. Then she gets all upset, like she didn't even know about the fated mate thing. And it just kind of bugged me, like the way she was like, well, I don't want to commit to somebody forever, like fated mates, and kind of is like fighting it to the detriment of him and their relationship. So that just kind of got on my nerves in the end, but I did still enjoy it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars and 2 chilies, and I'm definitely planning on reading the next one in July. Okay. So then I read an arc. I read Love, I believe it's Utley. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've thought it was Utley and I've seen people say Utley. So this is Love, Utley by S.J. Tilly. This is the first book in the Love Letter series. This is her brand new series. I read her Alliance series and I really liked it. I didn't love like all of them, but I thought they got better with each book. And I did really enjoy that series. So it was kind of interesting to go into this one, which was more of like a sports, kind of lightly sports, but more contemporary, not like mafia. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. Like I just had a really good time with it. It's not the best book you're ever going to read or anything, but I thought it was fun and it's like very low angst. So the setup of this is we have, Hannah and Maddox, and they had basically kind of like, she was really crushing on Maddox when she was at college, and they had kind of like a week-long kind of like fling at the college. She was about to like kind of go on a real date with him, although they did definitely hook up in the library where she worked, and they were like just smitten for each other. But unfortunately, she ends up getting a call. Her mom had a stroke, and her mom kind of has her own business. She runs it on her own, and she knows that she's not going to afford college, and her mom's going to need her to like take care of the business. So she basically has to drop out of college and leave immediately to head back home to get to her mom. And they didn't trade numbers or anything at this time, so they didn't have each other's numbers. So she wrote him a letter, and he wasn't home to get it, so she left it in his mailbox. And then basically she never heard from him. And she had given him his number. She wrote this love letter to him. And so she was very hurt. He ends up going to play pro NFL. He's a pro football player, and he's like this big star. And so she definitely did have opportunities to reach out to him, but she was very hurt. Like she felt like he just kind of like dropped her. And so it's like basically 15 years later, and she is working at this business for a long time. She's really worked her butt off to get where she is because she had to run her mom's business and then go to like a school, you know, like at night and different things like that. I believe it was her niece. I think it was her niece. I might be wrong, but they do call her the niece in this, is like the mother had died and didn't have anybody to go to. So her and her mom had taken her in and basically kind of like raised her together. So they have this cute little family. And so she did have a lot of responsibilities. And now Maddox is showing up because he just bought this company. He's like really smart with his investments and had companies and everything. And so he's retired from the NFL, but he actually owns this company, and he didn't know she worked there. So it's like they're kind of doing interviews to see if they're going to keep these same employees. And so he sees her in the interview and is just like totally blown away. He feels like she just abandoned him, like left. He never found her, and he didn't know what happened with her. And so they kind of have this little miscommunication of like what happened in the past. But I think it's resolved super quickly, and I really appreciated that we didn't just draw that out forever. They actually have this insane connection. They're really, you know, want to be together. There's this creep at the office that's really creepy towards her, so he's very protective and alpha, and they start to get pretty sexual with each other immediately. But they eventually do pretty quickly have the talk about what happened, so they clear the air on like this kind of, you know, misstep of them not being able to communicate, because of course, you know, he never got the letter, and so they end up just kind of secretly dating, because he is not her boss but the owner of the company, and there is this no fraternization policy that he basically put in place because so many people would try to hook up, like want to be with him. So they kind of have a little, oops, I clicked my camera. They kind of have this secret relationship going on. And so it kind of goes from there. I really, really loved this because I thought he was so sweet, so alpha. He like really wants to be a part of her mom and her niece's life. So he's also wooing them. And it was super spicy and sexy. We have another curvy heroine, which with SJ Chili like really loves doing her curvy heroines. But I like it because it's a curvy heroine that's not all in her head and like hating her body. You know, I really like those kind. And he is very, you know, into her body. So I really, really had a great time with this. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. And then I think it was 3 chilies, and I definitely want to continue the series because I do think the other side characters were also really interesting. Okay, then I had an ALC. I got an advanced listening copy of an A.L. Jackson book. This is actually my first A.L. Jackson. This was Hold Me Until Morning. This is the 4th book in the Time River series, but honestly, like I went in the 4th book and I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Obviously, there's a lot of characters from the previous books that are in here, so you know, obviously it'd probably be better if you read the other ones, but I think you could go into this as a standalone just fine. I did end up listening, I got the audiobook arc for this, so, and I really, really, oh, and you know what, it did end up having the narrator, oh, I think it's Stephen Dexter, I think that's the name. He's the one that does the Alien series that I was talking about. I fell in love with him from Choosing Theo, and I really love his voice. Anyways, this one is basically kind of like a small town. We have a curvy heroine, kind of a playboy hero. He's kind of seen as like the player, the playboy, never wants to settle down out of his group of friends, but there is a lot more to his character. He basically notices this new neighbor. She's kind of trying to move all this stuff like in the pouring rain, and he's like, what is she doing? So he tries to go kind of help her out, and he realizes it's this girl from his past. This is Haley, and she's come back after 6 years being gone. She is a single mom. She's trying to get a divorce right now, and she's kind of running away from her husband. You pretty much know he's like an abusive, kind of bad husband. And so she is living with her grandma and trying to kind of start fresh, and she's working at like this ranch and everything. And so she's trying to start new. She's kind of irritated seeing Cody because they do have a history together. One of her best friends from their childhood, like was like hooked up with him and liked him, but she actually really liked him too. And so added to some drama. There's some stuff that's revealed. They are both dealing with trauma that they have to deal with. And so that's the only thing kind of hindering them, because Cody pretty much is obsessed with her immediately. He does kind of come off a little like it's like the constant talk about the body and sexualizing her, but it was okay, you know. I think maybe it would be worse if I was reading this physically, but I was listening to the audiobook, so it kind of went faster for me. Also, A.L. Jackson like writes kind of like a longer, like trying to be like flowery prose and stuff like that. And I've heard that from other people, but I thought it was okay because in the audiobook, it didn't bother me at all. Maybe if I was reading it physically, it would have kind of got to me, but that didn't bother me in this. Anyway, sorry guys. What ends up happening is they're gonna kind of start dating. But they have to get over their previous traumas. They're, you know, he's seen as the playboy, but he's trying to be serious for her. He's also like, his company's like working at the ranch, so they're seeing each other. Her father wanted him to have nothing to do with his daughter. He kind of threatened him away from her when they were younger. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play here. So I did really enjoy the chemistry, the romance that happens between them. But where this kind of fell down a star for me was the suspense element. The suspense that comes in at the end, like we all know what's going to happen. It's the ex-husband, because once he starts coming into the picture, like he's a danger, and so Cody really wants to protect her. But it just took things to like another level of being so over the top and unrealistic, and all these like explosive reveals about like this villain that we didn't know was the villain, and what happened in their past and how that kind of kept them apart. And I just thought it was stupid. Like, I thought it was really over the top. I liked everything else. I just thought that was a little crazy, but I don't know. Maybe this is A.L. Jackson's usual thing with like adding the suspense. It's something that kind of bugs me with small town. I don't think you have to make every small town like a suspense element. Like, I don't really think it's needed with these books. But I still really enjoyed the romance and everything else. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And then I think I gave it 2.5 chilies, if I'm remembering correctly. But, you know, it was decent for my first A.L. Jackson. And I did appreciate the audiobook. I really love the audiobook. Okay, so then I had another arc. You can see I had a lot of arcs at the end of the month here that I had to get through. And this was Rule Breakers Fall Hardest by Micalea Smeltzer. This is the 6th book in the boys series. I think I've only read the first book in this series, so, you know, it doesn't matter. I didn't lose anything from coming in at book number 6. This one is like a childhood friends to enemies to lovers. It's an arranged marriage, fake marriage, single dad. So it's got all those tropes in there. I feel like authors are really trying to hit it with like having so many tropes in books now, but that's another tangent I can go on. So anyways, this book is about Dare and Rosie, and Rosie was basically crushing on Dare her whole childhood. She was in love with him. They were best friends, and supposedly something happened in their past where now they hate each other. It was like at the end of high school, and so they go to college together, but they hate each other. And you're kind of like, why do they hate each other? It didn't really make sense. So you're kind of waiting for that reveal to happen. And then what happens is Dare basically comes to Rosie to ask her to be his wife. He is desperate. He really wants her to marry him because he had an affair with a professor, and she ended up having a baby. She tried to play it off as her husband's. He kind of feels like she was just using him because her and her husband had issues getting pregnant. But he saw the baby and instantly knew, that's my son. And so he's basically trying to kind of go after her for shared custody. He wants to be a part of his son's life, even though he feels really young and unprepared. He wants to be a good dad. His dad was like a single dad and was always there for them, even though he had a huge business to run and everything. So he really wants to be that. And so his lawyer really thinks, you know, this would be better for him. So he's seen as like, you know, in a marriage and a more stable lifestyle, because that'll help him be able to get custody, or at least share custody of his son. So he basically kind of begs Rosie to do this. She eventually caves, and you can tell she caves because she really still does care about him. She constantly says it's for the old Dare, not the new Dare, and blah, blah, blah. But basically they decide to do this fake marriage. They have to get a house together, so they move in together, all this kind of stuff. And she's helping him get everything set to have his son. And so, like, you know, I thought it was really sweet how much she supported him. They're really irritated me in the beginning, especially when they do their little marriage at the courthouse and he literally leaves her there to go get drunk. And then she has to like go stay at a hotel by herself. And, you know, and then he gets a video online of him going off about how he hated her and blah, blah, blah. And so it was just really cruel. But he does really grow on you. The thing that was the issue with this book for me was the whole reason that they hated each other was really weak. And it was something from like their past, and it was honestly, seriously, like a little miscommunication that they could have talked about, since they were such close friends and they both were pining for each other at the time. They could have just had one conversation instead of hating each other. And I just thought that was a little weak. I'm kind of tired of the enemies to lovers thing when it's like makes no sense why they're enemies. And it took them forever to discuss this issue. They were literally like married, living together for a long time, and they weren't having the freaking conversation. It was making me irritated. Okay, sorry guys, this is gonna be a really bad cut, but I filmed this whole video and my phone shut off. So I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna kind of wrap this last one up and refilm the other ones. Ugh, it's so frustrating. So anyways, my whole issue with this was them not having the conversation. They literally lived together for so long and were doing all these things, you know, for each other and trying to figure things out, but they still had all the drama of like them supposedly having this history where they hated each other. So it's like, have the freaking conversation to resolve the issue. But anyways, I did enjoy this, except for that. So I do think that kind of brought it down a little bit, but I do still enjoy it because I loved seeing how sweet Dare was trying to become a father, him learning to be a young dad, and how much she really bonded with his child, and the child, like they made like this perfect little family. And so I did think those moments were really precious and beautiful. I just don't like this miscommunication thing. It drives me nuts. So I ended up giving this 4 stars, and then I think it was 2 chilies. Okay, so then I read Lilac. I actually listened to this on audiobook. It is available on Audible Plus right now. And this, I think, was a really good audiobook. It has a full cast, including Teddy Hamilton, who is one of my favorites. You'll hear me talk about him a couple times in this video. But I think the audiobook was good, and I think it's a good way to listen to this, way to read this, because I think it was a little too long for what it needed to be in this book. And so the audiobook made it go a little better for me. This is a rock star reverse harem kind of romance. We have Braxton, and she is a young, really badass, great guitarist. And she has been hired to replace their guitarist who had just died from an overdose. This band is kind of in chaos. They're kind of all at war with each other. And so the studio or execs has hired her to replace him for their tour and to hopefully push her career later on. She's not all about the fame. She is about the music and different things like that. But anyways, she signed on to this, and the guys all like hate her immediately. They all have their reasons, and they kind of look at her as the enemy, and they don't want her around, but they all want to F her too. They're all obsessed with her. They're all sexually into her. So it's that whole thing. We have Houston. He is the lead singer. We have Lauren. He's like he's like the playboy, charming guitarist. And then Jericho is the drummer. And so they have to go on tour. They're on the road. That's the like road trip kind of forced proximity situation going on. And so she's, you know, interested in all of them. They're all interested in hers. There's some bully aspects a little bit in here. I liked it. I do think it was too long. And I think there were some missed opportunities, because I think for it being so long, like it could have delved more into like being out as like a public figure, rock stars, and being like in a reverse harem relationship. There was also an MM dynamic that's alluded to a lot, like hinted at in the book, so I was getting excited. And they barely really touched on that. You could tell there was a couple of the guys that did have like a sexual connection, and I wanted more of that. We did get an MMF scene, but it was kind of brief and not everything I wanted it to be. I wanted more of the guys' connection too, but it was kind of all about her. But that is kind of how reverse harems are, so it's not like it's an MMF romance, so that's fine. I did think that there was a third act suspense that was thrown in out of nowhere that didn't need to be there. I thought it was stupid because, you know, like I said before, I don't like this constant need to throw in a third act suspense. You know, it already had a third act breakup going on. We didn't need a third act suspense on top of it. It just didn't make sense. And it was kind of like drawing out the book for me. So, anyways, I did really love Jericho. He was like my favorite. He was very like shy, sweet, broody. I love like the broody guys in reverse harems. But he was very alpha when it came to the bedroom. But also Lauren, he was like kind of did some really douchey things in this, but I ended up loving him because he was voiced by Teddy Hamilton, and that's just the magic of Teddy Hamilton. He manages to make characters likable, and I'll get into that in another book soon. But anyways, this is very spicy. I think it's a really good audiobook, so if you're interested, check it out on Audible Plus. I did give it 4 stars and 4 chilies because there's a lot of spice, a lot of sharing, you know, DP going on, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so then I read another arc, and this was the long one, and this is Oh, You're So Cold by Saffron A. Kent. I did get asked to do an arc for this, and I actually did an arc for the first one, and that one I enjoyed, but this one I liked a lot better. This is the second book in the Bad Boys of Bardstown series. And you can tell it's very interconnected with her other series, but I haven't read those, so I don't know those characters, but that's completely fine. This was a super slow burn, angsty, you know, forbidden type of thing. It's kind of like a twin brother's girlfriend romance. In this, we have Stellan and Dora comes off pretty immature in the beginning of this book. Kind of bratty and like very naive and immature, but she does grow on you throughout the book. She does kind of grow on you. So she is sneaking out of her house. She comes from a very rich family. She's got bodyguards and everything. And she very actively says that she'll like use guys, flirt with them to get what she wants. And that is just very unlikable. So I didn't really like that in the beginning. But as I said, she grows on you. So she's sneaking out because her dream is to be an actress and her mom will not allow it. Her mom's abusive, so do be aware there's a trigger warning for that. She's very abusive to her in a very like secretive and also emotional way. But she's sneaking out to meet a guy in the middle of the, like at nighttime to go do an audition. So you know this guy was shady and she was just too naive. But she happens to run into Stellan, and he is kind of just by himself. He's very broody. He's known as the cold twin. He's smoking out by himself at this party, and he sees her, and they have this instant connection. She's like in love at first sight kind of behavior, and she basically kind of throws herself at him, and I always have an issue with that too. It's just so desperate. But he's interested, but he basically turns her down. And what does she decide to do? She basically goes to flirt with his twin brother at the party, dance with him to try and make him jealous, to make a move on her, and he never does. So this kind of gets out of control because it goes on for like a year where he thinks she's dating his twin. Her and the twin aren't really boyfriend and girlfriend, but they are like best friends, and he has fallen in love with her. So he kind of gives her an ultimatum of like, I don't want to be friends anymore. I want to be together. I love you. You have till the end of like my, because he's in soccer, and he's like till the end of the whatever season, and we need to be together kind of thing. Or he gives her like a certain amount of weeks deadline. And so while he's on the road, she ends up texting him and deciding she needs to move on from her obsession with Stellan and go for a good guy. And she texts him about that. But Stellan had found his brother's phone and he decides to keep it. And for weeks, he kind of has this secret texting relationship going on with her. He like makes her dance for him and stuff. Like it's pretty crazy. And she has no idea it's him. But she's also having like conversations over the phone with Stellan because he's kind of blackmailing her a little bit, but he wants to finally have sex with her to try and get her out of his system. So it's a lot going on. I know I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but they do end up, you know, having this secret relationship because, you know, obviously he doesn't want to fully be with her. He has a lot of issues and from his childhood. He feels like he's exactly like his father and has like anger and violence issues. He doesn't want to put that onto another person. So that's why he's always so cold and controlled. And him and his twin have a very complicated, not great relationship. So, you know, they start a secret relationship. It is a very slow burn. It is very spicy. There's some slight daddy kink in here. I really love Stellan because even though he fights telling her he loves her and everything like that, he really shows her with all his little daily acts of care. He like braids her hair. He like gets her roses every day just because she loves roses. You know, he does a lot of aftercare, you know, with cuddling and giving her a bath. And he even makes her tea after he F's her face. Like, he's pretty rough. So it's a good time. I would have given this 5 stars if it was shorter. This book was over 600 pages and it was just too long. It was too drawn out, too many repetitive scenes. We have scenes like where he explains his history or his backstory, his trauma to 3 different people, and I don't think it's needed. A lot of back and forth of him not being with her, like the same kind of conversations. So I do think that if she would have like cut it like 150 pages or 100 pages shorter, I would have given this 5 stars because I do think it was really well done. I loved that the heroine was Indian and we have a lot of that kind of culture in here. She loved Bollywood and it was interesting hearing a lot more about that culture. I don't think there's enough of that in romance books. So I really loved that part of this. And I just loved how it was put into this book, and you could tell Saffron, it's like a big part of who she is and her culture. And so I appreciated that representation in this. It was pretty kinky with like that daddy kink. There's some cock warming, some butt play, a lot of talk about like breeding, but I can't breed you. So a lot of cum stuff, but and I don't know, like I thought it was very good. It was just too long. It took me like a few days to get through this and it was stressing me out because I was like going to be late doing my arc. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars and 3 chilies. Okay, sorry about this, you guys. I am so hot and I'm doing this a second time. So I'm just like, I'm frustrated with myself. I hate when this happens. Anyways, the last book that I read was Brutal Obsession, Brutal Obsession by S. Massery, and this is my first S. Massery. This is the first book. Oh, I didn't write the name, but it's like this hockey series. You probably already know about it, but it's very dark romance, a lot of triggers, so check your triggers, very kinky and bully romance. And I ended up using a credit, and I'm really glad I did because this was narrated by Teddy Hamilton. And I think I enjoyed it a lot more because of Teddy Hamilton. And the reason why is I think if I read this physically, I would have hated this hero a lot because it kicks off right in the beginning. This guy, what's his name? Grayson. He is like driving recklessly. I'm not sure if he was drinking, but he had a girl in the car with him and he ends up getting an accident, and the girl that he hits is Violet. That's our heroine. And she was on her way to be like a prima ballerina, and she ends up getting her like leg kind of like broken and a lot of bad stuff, you know, that she has a lot to recover from because of this accident. And he kind of goes and looks at her. She's bleeding. She ended up having like a really bad wound on her head, and he just kind of leaves her. Then he grabs the girl that's in his passenger seat, throw her in the driver's seat to cover his ass, and thinks that's going to be it. Violet remembers seeing him and remembers what happened, and so she tells the police, and so he ended up getting arrested, but nothing really happened because his dad's like a higher up politician and he gets him off. So they end up going to the same college, and now he sees her and he's like, oh, fuck that bitch. I hate her. I'm going to bully her. I'm going to make her life hell because she ruined my reputation. And you're like, that's pretty crazy that you're going to bully this girl that you ruined her life. Like, this was her dream. Her life's goal was to be a prima ballerina. And now she's been and like going through all this rehab with her leg's in constant pain. She doesn't think she'll ever be able to dance again. She was on the dance team at the college too, and she couldn't do that anymore. But she ruined your reputation, so you're gonna make her life hell. Makes no sense. So this guy does a lot of fucked up shit to Violet, but for some reason, I ended up liking him because of Teddy Hamilton. I don't know. He just made him a little better. Teddy Hamilton does such a good job with like that obsessive, possessive, over-the-top kind of hero in audiobooks. And I just thought he was so fantastic in this. I am a stan for Teddy Hamilton. I know it. So she ended up having a creepy ex and also a stalker. And so he ended up not being the worst choice for her. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of dub-con, non-con. He forces her to give a guy a blowjob, like blackmails her. You know, it's crazy. But he becomes obsessed with her and quickly is like, I want her for me. I don't care. I will do anything for her. And he is a star on the hockey team. And so it introduces these other hockey players that I'm very interested in. I really was interested in the guy that she was like, he made her give him a blowjob. I don't know. That was, I mean, this book is so spicy. The amount of kinks going on in this, it's so spicy. So I did think the stalker thing and the thing happening at the end was kind of resolved super quickly. I would have liked more of that. So I didn't give this a full 5 stars, but I gave it 4.5 stars. And because of all the kinks and spiciness, that's 5 chilies. So just to name some of the kinks, we have primal play, spitting, there's some butt stuff going on, bondage, there's knife play and blood play, some sharing again, public sex, a little bit of the, you know, exhibitionism with that. There's a lot going on. There's so much spice in this, and I loved it. I really love the audiobook. I highly recommend it. Teddy Hamilton is perfection as always. So I ended up really loving this. I gave it 4.5 stars. So I kind of wanted to go all 5 stars, but it wasn't a perfect book, but I think I had a great time with it. So I definitely can't wait to read more as Massery and continue with this series. All right, sorry this last half of this video was pretty crazy because my phone shut off. I hate that. Anyways, I apologize if this is a little chaotic and a mess. But thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and if any of these are your favorite. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment, and like the video. And I will see you guys on the next one.